MyMiniFactory manages maker merchants where Etsy's edge erodes. Makers migrate. And Galactic Armory gets Games Workshop gut punch, files forced offline. All this and more, PrintFix Friday, episode 201. Let's get into it. Starting off with a little bit of somber yet expected news, Galactic Armory has been hit with a cease and desist from Games Workshop. As you may know, Games Workshop are the proprietors of the game Warhammer 40k, where you can buy heavily priced miniatures, explicitly overpriced paints, and they've been on a bit of a warpath against the 3D printing industry for a while. But Galactic Armory's 40k files are gone. A cease and desist is a legal thing, which basically says, hey, you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing with intellectual property that you don't own, so we're going to tell you to immediately halt all sales, or we'll see you in court. As a maker, I'm bummed, because they do make amazing armor sets, truly lifelike characters in the method that you would expect. They can be big, they can be small, absolutely beautiful pieces from Galactic Armory. However, I also see the Games Workshop side of this, where it is their intellectual property and they have the legal right to do this. We've discussed this before on the podcast with Seth Polanski. We'll card to that episode so you guys can take a look, talking about fan art and how fan art, for the most part, is completely and utterly illegal and you can't do it. But a lot of times these facilities turn a blind eye to it because it doesn't impact their ability to do business, and if anything, assists them in doing business. However, specifically Games Workshop and Nintendo have been historically litigious in this community and have gone after makers and individuals that are specifically selling the file. The fact that this is via a Patreon tells you that, yes, there is a financial component to this. A lot of creators have tried their best to work around this by saying, you're not paying for the models, you're paying for my time and you're supporting me, and the files are just something that I give away as part of the Patreon. It just depends on where you're located. The courts may agree with you or may not. This goes to show that while, yes, they've created a huge name for themselves, making absolutely gorgeous models, literally over 50 pages worth of models available, the vast majority of them are easily classified as fan art. If you have ever wanted to do a cosplay of sorts, chances are Galactic Armory has the cosplay suits for you. But that's where it gets a little bit tricky of where do we draw the line of fan art versus intellectual property versus some sort of violation. And realistically, the answer is it depends. It comes down to whether or not the companies actually care, or more specifically, whether they notice. Games Workshop is known for going after creators that do it, and as we can see, literally the second sentence in their post, while not totally unexpected, it is a huge bummer. Of course it's a huge bummer. There's a ton of money tied up in this, and they might not have made their return on their investment. It was always a game of time, of how long these things would take. And while it is a bummer, as a business, I recognize Games Workshop's ability to do this, but I don't have to like it as a person. In my non-legal opinion, I believe that they're okay because they're not technically going after the direct market that Games Workshop goes after. Games Workshop doesn't make huge cosplay pieces for people, and so it's not really a market that they play in. But the big issue here is not necessarily whether or not Games Workshop plays in the market, it is more specifically the fact that they are doing it for a profit. A lot of you saw last week's episode, and a lot of you are here from our collaboration with Sam Crack. Our large video on it is coming soon. We are still trying to get together to deliver the final parts. But a lot of you said to be careful about BMW because they could sue you. They can, but we're going to give it away for free. We are not taking any money from BMW because they don't make this. This isn't what they do. We're also not selling it for a profit. we are giving away the files to anyone that owns a 3D printer to be able to have the right to repair their own vehicle. While you could argue this is also intellectual property, it also kind of plays in the right to repair world. Galactic Armory specifically is not in that right to repair world. They are much more in the file selling and distribution. And if we're talking about selling and distribution, my name's Grant, this is 3D Musketeers and PrintFixFriday, where we solicit and distribute knowledge to you out there to keep your printers printing with purpose. We want to help you. If you are going through issues with your machines, you can reach out to us via all the social medias or our preferred way, which is to film a video and tag us in the description so we can show it on YouTube and go through with you how to fix the problem. As we look at the future of PrintFixFriday, we're going to be changing some of it and being a lot more back and forth with individuals rather than this is your issue, this is how we fix it, good luck. And we're hoping to have a lot more audience interactions. So if you want to be featured in a PrintFixFriday, have an interesting print failure that you could use some help on, please reach out to us. We'd love to give you a hand. And hey, don't forget to leave a like and get subscribed while you're at it. But a couple of weeks back, we talked about Etsy and how Etsy's terms of service could theoretically end 3D print farming as we know it on their platform. And interestingly, the comments were a lot more pro Etsy than we were expecting. Yes, there were obviously people in there that are huge on Etsy and don't want this to go away because that's where their income occurs. But there were a lot of people that do 3D printing as a hobby, as a profession, that look at Etsy and see it as more of 3D printed tchotchke and 3D printed junk, because it really did just become a race to the bottom on price. There have been some updates to this, and it's not really made anything clearer, to be honest with you. MyMiniFactory, though, has come out and said, we have a solution, but we need your help. Recently, we sat down with Reese from MyMiniFactory and had a bit of a discussion about this brand new platform that they are calling their Premium Merchant.
Premium Merchant program, and in a nutshell, it's a way of us verifying makers. And that's kind of a broad term, but essentially it means a few different things. One, that they are, claiming that they are printing files that they've licensed from creators. They haven't just downloaded them, and are now basically profiting off files that they didn't even have permission to print. So by being part of the ecosystem, you're basically shouting to the world that you are proud to be designing files that you have officially licensed. But also we have a tight-knit community that we've developed where we actually are acting kind of as a proxy for verifying these makers for that they print great quality files. They ship on time, they've got good customer service and whatnot. And so by becoming part of this program, part of this ecosystem, you're essentially verifying your status as a merchant, as a maker, so that people out in the world will know that they're buying from a trusted source, both in terms of the actual source of the files and the quality that they are going to get.
And to be clear, MyMiniFactory was not planning on launching this anytime soon. But when this whole Etsy debacle happened, it made sense for them to go public and talk about it, to the greater community as a whole and say, instead of us sitting here and trying to determine what makes sense from the inside, why don't we bring in people from the outside? I think that's a great way to approach it, where not only do you look at it from a business perspective, but you look at it from a community perspective. Reese discussed further how, while there is a monthly subscription fee for this, which is $24.99 a month, it does give you immediate access to their Discord server where they are soliciting feedback from the merchants that are already a part of the platform so that they can build something that is built by the community for the community. It's something that we love to see in platforms like this. But this is not without its challenges, with one of the big ones being, how do we stop people from competing on price?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a very tricky issue that we're not going to claim we just have the kind of like one size fits all solution. At the end of the day, we're trying to develop an overarching ecosystem that facilitates the fair selling of these files.
Depending on where you are in the world, your cost of materials, your cost of machines, and your cost of labor can vary wildly. If this isn't obvious, just look at the prices of printers coming out of places like the UK and the EU versus printers that are coming out of China. There's a cost difference when you have a superiority for manufacturing and cheap labor versus everywhere else in the world. But see, MyMiniFactory says that we recognize that we are not going to be perfect at it. We want help from the community, but we don't just want people that aren't going to have any skin in the game. And that's where this $24.99 a month comes from. I'm not saying that MyMiniFactory is going to be looking at the comments, getting your advice from the comments. So if you have any advice, put it in those comments down below. But they're going to be there. This should be very obvious to you all. And we can see that it's not just paying for access. You get other discounts and deals and things like that. And certainly if you are more of a power user on MyMiniFactory, there's quite a bit of a value. But what they've also done is they've gone old school. Some of you might remember 3D hubs from back in the day where you could find a maker local to you to get something made. That was what 3D hubs was all about. Then they decided to cut that part away and make it only for businesses. Then as a business, you had to strip your own marketing from and only use 3D hubs marketing, and that's where we as a business said absolutely not, we're done. But now you can see that while the map is still growing and there's only a few people on it, it is already reasonably populated so that you can find a maker somewhat in your area should you actually need it. And MyMiniFactory being focused on, I know this might come as a surprise to you, but miniatures and tabletop gaming. It's not like it's in their name or anything. A lot of these merchants are people that do resin printing, which, as we know, is toxic. This resin is toxic. It's one of the things we say around here. Resin is toxic. Please don't drink it or pour it down the drain. We have an interesting one for you next week, so make sure you get subscribed and leave a like. Ring the bell. Is that still a thing? So you can see it, because we do have an interesting, crazy resin failure for next week for you all. But I like this. We are now pushing to get people to work locally rather than just trying to find the best price. Often people go to Etsy to look for handmade items and goods somewhat local to them. This solves the problem. But we can see what merchant profiles already look like here with Tattles Told 3D. We can look at going to their merchant store to buy their products, which is on their own website. This is traditionally against the rules for all of these sites, including Etsy, to link out to your own store. But MyMiniFactory said, nah, fam, we are here to help you get business. And if that makes it easier for you to do business on your own website, then go and do it. But where it gets even better is we deal with intellectual property. It's like we have an intellectual property episode where we can see that this creator has commercially licensed creator brands that is validated by MyMiniFactory for these specific creators. This is awesome. This, to me, is a perfect way to deal with this. Validate that you have the rights to sell it. If you don't have the rights to sell it, then you can't sell it. That is so good, and it builds character in this community where now we're going after people that have the rights, that are focusing on quality, that are focusing on making sure that they're staying true to what the original designers wanted. I love that. That's the cool thing. You are able to get assistance no matter where you might be. With one of the big ones being all about making sure that everything is validated.
You know, on the Etsy point, at the end of the day, Etsy is not a 3D printing marketplace. You know, they're in, well, not quite an everything store. They I suppose, claim to be a you know, kind of homemade craft store, but there's a lot of stuff you can now find on that platform. So, you know, that's why we wanted to get involved in this space and say, hey, look, we, as you say, like primarily are file focused, but we also, you know, have been part of this for a very long time, and we want to help create this space or you know, program or however it shapes up in the long run, that indeed improves the 3D printing ecosystem and marketplace. And yeah, in the short term, if that's, or even in the long term, if that's directing people away from the platform, that's still, you know, it's still quality designs and quality prints that we're promoting, whether the transaction itself is happening on MyMiniFactory or not. You know, we see it as a way of improving the entire market in a way.
And yes, this is still in beta, but if you are someone that does a lot of miniature printing and you focus on high detail resin or tabletop gaming in general, you might want to check this out. While it is not a perfect solution, they are aware it's not a perfect solution.
So look, it's also worth noting that this is very much version 1 of the program. And we are looking to develop it with the community, and indeed the people who have well over 100 makers now who subscribe to the program are going to be part of developing the next iteration. And we want to do this hand in hand with the community so that we can get it right at the end of the day, because this is a new space. It's a new way that people are interacting with physical products at the end of the day. So we kind of turn to the community to help us figure out how the next version comes to life. So yeah, look, if there's anyone out there who has any thoughts and they want to let us know in the comments how something like this could be realized, please feel free to share those so we can take a look.
So what does this mean exactly? Well, Etsy's not going anywhere, but certainly they've lost a lot of trust in the community. And MyMiniFactory says, we don't have something perfect, but we have something, and we want to get it out there for you, the community, to be a part of. So I'd like to pass it off to you all and say, if you had the opportunity to provide feedback directly to MyMiniFactory about their platform, put that down in the comments. We want this to be something where all of us as makers, be it hobbyists, professionals, industry, whatever, can work together to create a better future where we have less issues competing on price, and instead we compete on quality, speed, customer service, other things that matter more than price. And certainly once this is out of beta and an official big product where they have done like a version 1 release, if you will, we will be starting to recommend this for customers that might need work that maybe we can't handle, and certainly as an alternative to using some of the larger service bureaus out there. We always recommend to shop local when possible. Yes, it might come at a slightly increased cost, but building that local relationship with someone, be it a maker or otherwise, vastly outweighs the couple of dollars that you could save, and you'll likely get it a whole lot faster too. But I'd love to know from you all down in those comments. Where do you see the potentials for abuse as well? We can look at it and say all the things that we want it to be, but we also have to look at it and see where do we believe it could be abused and manipulated by others, and try to work on dealing with that before it becomes a problem. But I do think they are moving in the right direction. The community needs more things like this, and I certainly hope that they don't go by the wayside of the ways that 3D Hubs has gone and ends up being more for businesses only. This, to me, is what I really always wanted for 3D Hubs, and it's awesome to see MyMiniFactory coming out with a brand new system that emulates much of what we loved about the old school 3D Hubs, but taking care, in my opinion, of some of these ridiculous issues with, do you have the rights to print the files? When it comes to having rights, ultimately, the lawyers will always win. Whether you're in the right or you're in the wrong, the lawyers never lose. And if you don't have to hire lawyers, that makes life a whole lot better. What also makes my life a whole lot better, the name's listed right next to me at the $5 tier and higher. Thank you for those of you that help make these videos possible. And if you do want to support the efforts, you can do so by joining for as little as $1 a month. And at the $10 tier and higher, you get to come hang out in our private Discord server where, among other things, we do weekly live hangouts right after the podcast, where you guys get to ask way more in-depth questions about the show and everything that happens to it. And of course, one-on-one assistance that happens a lot faster than tagging us in videos. That is all we have for you all today. Don't forget to leave a like and get subscribed. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And I guess for the second time in the 200s, as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one.